The 3-day wait and its particular effect on the poor and marginalised women really worries me most, because I sometimes feel that in most legislation it is the most marginalised and those on the fringes of society that are left behind. That's women in addiction, women in homelessness, and women with low educational attainment, because often self-advocacy or even knowing your rights and being able to access a provider can be limited. Domestic violence, medical card holders is an issue. Direct provision. Take Mosney, for example. One bus out of Mosney a week. This is a huge issue. There's usually only one doctor or two doctors, some of them provided by safety net services, operating in the likes of Mosney. And what if that doctor is a conscientious objector and you're literally waiting for 5-6 days before you can actually leave Mosney again to go and access another doctor? Rural Ireland, what if your local doctor objects and you have to travel to another town? A woman who was pregnant due to, like I said, due to sexual abuse and rape. The Abortion Services Network clearly outlines this in their communication with you and with the rest of us this week. They talk about real-life experiences that they deal with on a daily basis. Mara Clark outlines homeless women, and they have been hearing from an increased number of people who are homeless but need abortion services. A few weeks ago, she had 4 homeless clients in 1 week. Many of those clients are homeless as a result of abusive relationships, and others have fallen on hard times. Where do you suggest a homeless woman go to experience the 5 to 6 hours of extreme bleeding and cramping that some people experience, not to mention the additional possible side effects of nausea, chills, fever and diarrhoea? In my own, I have countless examples of women who are homeless that are in extreme circumstances. I remember working in Ainger Street. It's now closed down, the facility, but it was probably about the year 2000. And I remember one of those women who was not only repeatedly raped by her grown-up son, but her ex-partner, who she had to leave the house to get away from, waited outside the post office every week for that one day that she would leave the hostel to take her money from her. How can she, when she literally has an abusive man, stand on the street in Ainger Street to stop her even being able to access her own social welfare? How is she meant to make repeated calls to a doctor? Women in and escaping abusive relationships. Speaking of women who are made homeless due to abusive partners, the largest percentage of the Abortion Support Network's clients are in and escaping abusive relationships, often with men who won't use or sabotage birth control. It can be impossible for these women to leave the house for one doctor's appointment. 2 or 3 could raise suspicion. In the past, they've arranged for these women to travel on days when their partners were at stag do's or on work trips, or have advised on how it may be possible to access safe but illegal early medication abortion pills through friends. One woman they'd arranged to travel disappeared and was unreachable. She contacted them a year later to apologise for going missing. Her partner had discovered her plan to terminate and beat her so badly that she couldn't travel. When she got back in touch, she had a young baby and another pregnancy that she needed to help to terminate. When I read about this one circumstance from this one woman from the Abortion Support Network, I was reminded and quite upset by a woman once, I'd say about 8 years ago, when I worked in the addiction sector. And one of my service users came into the programme, and she said she had repeatedly heard the migrant woman who was already isolated, who lived next door, screaming, and it sounded like she was being beaten on a regular basis. We took the risk one day to call to the woman in the flat, and she was absolutely petrified. She wasn't in addiction, but I asked her would she like to come up to the programme just so that she could try and have some sort of support. She looked really I'm trying not to get upset, right? But she looked really unwell, and she had a bun on her hair. And she told us how she wasn't allowed to even have a hairbrush. She wasn't allowed to have sanitary products. And she asked if we, instead of her coming to us, if we could drop her, while her husband was out, some stuff to wash herself with. After a few days of calling back to her, sneaking in sanitary products, we finally convinced her to come up to the community centre while her husband was out. She was petrified. We had to hire a hairdresser to spend hours taking the knot out of the top of her hair because it had been so long since she was allowed to brush her hair. She had 2 young children. After that one day of finally getting her to the centre, she never came back to us again, and she stopped opening the door to us. Now, I have no idea if my intervention stopped her being able to come back to us and leave that house again. She could never make it to a doctor. 3 days is not acceptable for women like that, and this bill does not legislate for those women. Lastly, Amendment 34 would allow for otherwise appropriate medical principles to be incorporated in how we date pregnancies for the purpose of this section, and is drawn from an amendment by Deputy O'Connell in the Dáil. I think the principle that it would be dated from the first day of a woman's last menstrual period is problematic, and I think you know this, so I don't need to elaborate on this, that the time period from which a woman will get pregnant won't be from the first day of her last period, and this really shortens the amount of time. So in some cases you could be obviously seen as 12 weeks, but you are in fact only 9 or 10. And I think if we are to keep the 3-day wait for the majority of cases, I think we need to really look at those specific cases where we need to carve out exemptions to that 3-day waiting period. Or this will just be another piece of legislation that has absolutely no use to women who are completely in dire circumstances, like the women that I've worked with for many years, that I don't feel that this 3-day wait period helps in any sense. Thank you.